The modern paradigm would have you believe that red hair, blonde hair, blue eyes, green eyes, and rhesus negative blood are mutations that arose out of nowhere. All legitimate royal families have rhesus negative blood, most of them also carrying R1BY DNA, which is from the Israelites who were created in the likeness of God. The rhesus negative bloodline is the purest representation of what the ancient Israelites would have been, and this is provable through not only prophecy, history, and genetics, but also through heraldry, which was given to them for the purpose that they may be identified in the end times. So, what is this rhesus negative blood? Rhesus negative blood is often called alien blood by scientists because it lacks the rhesus monkey blood antigen. 85% of the human population is Rh positive, with only 15% being Rh negative. And out of 612 primate species and subspecies recognized by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, not one of them has rhesus negative blood. Anthropologist and historian Robert Sepper has been bringing to light the fact that Cro-Magnon carried rhesus negative blood and for the last 30,000 years have remained nearly unchanged. A Cro-Magnon DNA sequence 28,000 years old was obtained from fossil bones discovered in the Pagliacci cave in Italy. Results show that the DNA is identical to the DNA sequences of modern Europeans. The DNA sequence has remained static and unchanged for 28,000 years. This means that Cro-Magnon was a fully modern individual. Re-examining the out-of-Africa theory and the origin of Europeans, in light of the genealogy, 7,556 haplotypes of 46 subclades and 17 major haplogroups were considered, and the finding that the European haplogroups did not stem from African haplogroups A or B is supported in the fact that bearers of the European haplogroups, as well as all non-African haplogroups, did not carry these SNPs. So besides the fact that this blood type seems to be alien in nature, what are some traits of rhesus negative blooded people? They usually have ESP, psychic abilities, having a feeling of just knowing that something is going to happen before it does. Higher than average IQ, a drive to seek out truth or answers, love of nature and outdoors, a feeling of not belonging or being an outsider, a love and interest for space and science, frequent empathetic illnesses, tendency toward healing professions, tendency to be in close proximity to inexplicable strange events. And now we get to the physical traits. They often have a larger than average head size, heightened senses including vision, stronger than average immune systems, lower than average body temperature, blood pressure, and a low pulse rate, an extra ribber vertebrae, which some people compare to the Adam and Eve story. They also have extremely high rates of left-handedness, and it's speculated that left-handedness actually comes from the rhesus negative bloodline. And as you know, Hebrew is written right to left. Could it be because it's written by left-handed rhesus negatives? More traits of this bloodline is reddish or blonde hair, and green or blue eyes that change and are piercing. You should know that geneticists compared mitochondrial DNA from blue-eyed individuals in countries as diverse as Jordan, Denmark, and Turkey, concluding that people with blue eyes have a single common ancestor that lived near the Black Sea area 8,000 years ago, spreading out with agriculture. The first blue-eyed humans were among the Proto-Indo-European Aryans, who subsequently spread agriculture into Western Europe and later rode horses into Iran and India. As you can see here, there are still traces of this lineage in Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan, and India. Many studies are now coming out explaining how anomalous blue-eyed people came to Israel 6,500 years ago. This data was extrapolated by a study of bones from a massive Galilee necropolis, helping fill a 3,000-year gap in knowledge of ancient Levant settlers. And as you know, Jesus was from Galilee. This should be no surprise, as ancient art from Egypt, Samaria, and Israel all depict blue-eyed people. It's important to note that Abraham, the ancestor of the Israelites, actually came from Mesopotamia, and we'll get into the migrations in a bit, but I want you to understand that Abraham was blessed because he kept his bloodline pure and intact and retained his belief in God. He kept his rhesus negative bloodline intact, and if you're skeptical, let me draw comparisons. You have the Israelites, claimed to be the seed of God, who write right to left and obtain all their blessings through their bloodline from Abraham, who makes a covenant with God, but has to keep his bloodline pure in order to maintain the blessings. He promised his descendants will fill the earth and establish many kinglands. Then you have this extremely rare blood type that comes with tons of extra conscious abilities and extremely rare phenotypes, high IQ, and every single royal family on earth carries this blood type. Not to mention, tons of them are left-handed. All royal families are rhesus negative blooded and R1b haplogroup. All presidents descend from Scottish and English royalty. 5 out of the last 7 were left-handed. As you know, red hair is a trait of rhesus negative blood, which is said to be alien blood. Regardless of how Esau's descendants would look, Jacob would have also carried this trait and passed it on to the Israelites. Jacob's grandfather is the same man, Abraham, and he met God and was told that he would have a bloodline that would rule the earth. And the people in charge of ruling the earth right now are all of rhesus negative blood, many of them carrying the red hair trait. And did I mention that they all carry the R1b haplogroup, which originates in Asia and comes through Mesopotamia? They were genetically synonymous and must have carried the same Y-DNA profile, which comes directly from Noah through Shem. I should note that the countries with the highest amount of R1b Y-DNA are also the countries in which rhesus-negative blood is the most prolific. This haplogroup follows the migrational patterns of the Israelites exactly. But before I go into that, let's read a couple articles explaining the migrations of this haplogroup. R1b M269. R1b V88 is associated with the domestication of cattle in northern Mesopotamia. Both branches of R1b probably split soon after the cattle were domesticated, approximately 10,500 years ago, around 8,500 BCE. R1b V88 migrated south towards the Levant and Egypt. The migration of R1b people can be followed archaeologically through the presence of domesticated cattle, which appear in central Syria around 8,000 to 7,500 BCE, then in the southern Levant and Egypt around 7,000 to 6,500 BC. Cattle herders subsequently spread across most of northern and eastern Africa. But the most compelling evidence that R1b people related to modern Europeans once roamed the Sahara is to be found at Tassili Niger in southern Algeria, a famous site of pyroglyphs dating from the Neolithic era. Some paintings, dating from around 3000 BCE, depict fair-skinned and blonde or auburn-haired women riding on cows. The oldest known R1b V88 sample in Europe is a 6,200-year-old farmer/herder from Catalonia tested by Hack et al. In 2015. Another migration across the Caucasus happened shortly before 3700 BC, when the Maykop culture, the world's first Bronze Age society, suddenly materialized in the northwest Caucasus, apparently out of nowhere. The origins of Maykop are still uncertain, but archaeologists have linked it to contemporary Chalcolithic cultures in Assyria and western Iran. Archaeology also shows a clear diffusion of bronze working in the Kurgan-type burials, from the Maykop culture to the Pontic steppe, where the Yamna culture developed soon afterwards. Kurgan burials would become a dominant feature of ancient Indo-European societies and were widely used by the Celts, Romans, Germanic tribes, Scythians, and among others. Haplogroup R2 also exists and initially migrated into South Asia. Today, R2 descendants are found at the highest levels among the Burusho people of Pakistan. In India, it is speculated that the Brahmin caste was actually descended from the R1a haplogroup, which would explain their Indo-European/Aryan roots. Now, if you look at the R1b haplogroup today, they exactly match the migrational patterns of the Israelites. They traveled northwards through Scythia, becoming the Germanic tribes, and moved westwards and northwards. Essentially, this haplogroup is everywhere and is responsible for many innovations and massive paradigm shifts.